Okay. All right, Council. Thank you for your time today. I'm actually just going to be brief. This is a fairly straightforward ordinance, even though it seems a little complicated. But this is the C-PACER ordinance, which is enabling legislation passed by the Tennessee State Legislature. It allows us to finance, well, not us, actually, external lenders to be able to finance energy and water efficiency projects as well as renewable energy and resiliency projects. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it works and how folks can access, or really institutions and organizations can access this capital. So C-PACER is authorized by Title 68, Chapter 205 in the Tennessee Code Annotated, and it provides property-based financing for energy and water efficiency projects. It acts very much like an assessment. This is a financing measure that allows a voluntary assessment lien to be placed on the property, and the funds are repaid every year they're paid over a long period of time, but payments are made every year with your property tax assessments. And they are certified by the city to be a cash flow benefit to operating expenses. And again, they're secured by a voluntary assessment lien. And this is something that is pre-agreed upon by the organization seeking the funding and a lender. The city simply certifies that these are energy efficiency upgrades. It's a very low risk to lenders and capital providers, and there have been 0 foreclosures on the C-PACE project or funds that have been closed nationwide. And I'm happy to take any questions as I'm moving through this.
Yeah, I've got one. So I borrow money from a bank.
Yep.
And then what's the city's role?
So the city allows the assessor basically, or they allow a voluntary assessment to be placed on the land.
We do that.
Yes, although we
Okay.
are able to delegate that responsibility to the lender. So in essence, our primary responsibility is to just certify that this is an eligible project by statute.
So you're saying that my project is eligible to First Tennessee, or
Right.
First Horizon,
That's
or
right.
whatever. And so you're kind of putting your imprimatur of okayedness.
That's right.
Is there any risk?
So there's very limited risk to the city, and this is something that Phil has been very helpfully pointing out. The city takes on no liability except for cases of gross negligence. So if our office were to, be able to be demonstrably negligent in reviewing that eligibility, then it's possible that the city could be held liable. But that's never happened in the history of C-PACE, and we would,
I got it.
our office would make sure that these projects are eligible.
Okay.
But otherwise, no. The city's not responsible for collecting those dollars under the program that we've designed. We are not responsible for any losses to the lender, and this simply allows us to place that voluntary assessment lien on the property, and then the lender and the organization receiving the money work that out amongst themselves. But the payment occurs every year with
Who
the
goes
time
in
of the
the
tax.
lien?
I'm sorry?
We place the assessment lien, you place the
right.
assessment lien on my property.
That's right.
And I default. Do you call it in?
No, that would be the lender's responsibility. We would simply have it recorded on the property information. And again, we would delegate all of
It's
that.
on our rolls.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I want to underscore the voluntary part. Because
Yes.
this was passed by the Tennessee General Assembly.
It was.
Okay. And you have the choice or the freedom to decide whether or not you want to
That's
participate in
exactly
this
right.
program or not.
I would anticipate no more of 1 to 3 of these actually even coming before the city for approval every year.
Okay.
These are, not going to be, mom and pop organizations most likely applying for them. There are other financing mechanisms, but if you are, if you do see an opportunity to invest in deep energy efficiency upgrades, this is a good option for that. Again, there have been, I think, in the total of Tennessee, since the enabling legislation had passed, across the 4 cities, I think, that have enabled this legislation, there have been like 3 deals.
They're big deals.
They're fairly large, yes.
Fairly large deal.
Okay.
So it's not imposing any will onto a small business
No,
owner and
absolutely not.
adding in some layer of restriction.
Entirely
for-
voluntary.
I want to make sure that's
Yep.
clear before it's out there and
Absolutely.
reported.
Thank you for
we're-
that clarification.
I mean, that's important to know.
It is.
This is voluntary and you have the freedom to choose or not choose
Yes.
this program.
This is expanding the options that property owners have to raise capital for energy efficiency projects.
Does council approve or?
No, these would
you're
simply
just
be, our
doing-
director of sustainability would simply certify that this is eligible.
Thank you.
Opens a path for another form of financing.
That's right. And again, how it works is the project is identified, they include retrofits and new construction. Our costs and improvements are certified by our director of sustainability as being eligible. The property owner and the capital provider reach mutual terms for financing. That includes everything that you would normally have in a loan. The repayment maximum term is basically the weighted average of the useful life of the improvements, which typically tends to be 15 to 30 years. And then the repayment is billed, collected, and enforced directly by the capital provider, not the city. And again, the statute provides very limited liability to local government. And the only liability we would ever incur is in the case of gross negligence.
So, and I'm sorry, I'm going to keep hammering this.
Yes,
This is between you and your lender,
that's right. You and a bank.
you and a bank, not
Yep.
you and the city.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
You have to come, the property owner and the capital provider both have to provide sign off for this to happen.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, I want to just kind of run through the three areas where CPACER financing has been enabled at the local level is Memphis, Nashville, and Robertson County and White House, Tennessee. And each of them have each approved one project. Enabling legislation is currently in progress in an additional 4 jurisdictions, including Chattanooga.
I could see this being a great tool for like our hospital
Yeah,
facilities.
absolutely.
For UTC, like groups that have a lot of capital facilities.
And the good news is that for folks who do choose to pursue this capital option, it provides 100% of the project cost up front without any cash down, and it is the repayment terms happen at the point of your tax assessment being, or your property tax bills going out, and then the lender would then time their bills to go out with the assessments.
Is this available for new construction, refinancing? Does this cover the
Both,
gamut?
and
Because
I'll
it's
cover
this is
the
between you and your lender.
That's right.
Okay, so it could be a different scenario.
That's right.
Okay,
Yep.
interesting.
And this kind of addresses your primary point. Most properties other than single-family residential can use CPACER. So that means offices, multifamily housing, industrial, retail, hotels, agriculture, schools. Actually, I don't think government entities would be able to use it, but hospitals is a good example. And again, the benefits to the property owner is it's 100% financing for the improvements. Typically, the energy savings exceed the payments, which immediately provides improved net operating income. And a good example of this is you improve the energy efficiency of your building to such a degree that you would ultimately have, had you not done that, been paying more in probably electric costs or what have you. And it also increases property values, which is a benefit to our local government, which will ultimately increase the tax base, which is why the lien stays on the property itself and does not transfer. The owner doesn't, if the owner sells the property, the lien stays on the property.
Stays with the property.
And of course, that would be, any title company would be able to disclose that at the point of sale.
So this is to ease the burden on energy consumption.
Yes, among other things. So if you were to want to finance additional resiliency for your building, to Councilwoman Hill's hospital example, and you wanted to add solar panels to the roof, you could
That's what I'm
finance that
saying.
there.
You're gonna save energy.
That's right. You could do that,
Okay.
or you could do something like, as you're building a new building, you could choose the highest energy rated materials and make your building incredibly energy efficient.
So it's tied to energy efficiency and usage.
Yes. Resiliency, water improvements,
Yeah,
those kinds
got
of things. And again, the amortization can be up for a period of 30 years. And this allows financing for the kinds of retrofits that aren't just swapping out light bulbs or improving or replacing windows, but the kinds of retrofits that often require tens of millions of dollars in financing to significantly improve a building. Because we know that in order to meet our goals as a community, and there's a private incentive to save money for these buildings as well, that there's going to have to be financing to make this possible, and this is exactly what that does. Again, benefits to CPACER to local government. Again, none of our local financial resources are at risk. We generally have no liability for non-payment by the property owner, and we're only liable in cases of gross negligence. This helps us achieve our sustainability goals without public spending. Not a single public dollar goes into this program. And it's also an economic development tool. By incentivizing retrofits and new construction, we help create those green new jobs that we've been talking about. Again, the CPACER enabling legislation outlined several categories for eligible improvements, including energy and water efficiency, renewable energy, and resiliency measures, including protections against flooding, wind, energy storage. Again, these are things that, as we have regular tornado warnings and watches, improving your building's ability to withstand those kinds of extreme weather events is also a part of this. Finally, the qualified properties that would be eligible for these kinds of financing tools are commercial properties, agricultural, industrial, multifamily, rental housing above 5 units. And we can, with government agencies, we can include buildings and land owned by government agencies, particularly those that we've leased out, as well as retrofit and new construction. The underwriting requirements, which I might lose some of you here, but that's okay. I just wanted to make sure I included this information. It's a little boring, but the financing does include hard and soft costs, excluding land acquisition. So you couldn't purchase land with this. And the financing cannot be more than 25% of the fair market value of the property. And also, I didn't include this in here, but your overall loan-to-value ratio for the property cannot exceed 90%. That means CPACER and all of your other loans. So you can't over-leverage this and be underwater with the value of the property.
So is that where we come in at assuring that this is met?
So some of it, yes, we would check this, but we would really rely on the lender to make sure that this is actually, like, they would have access to all of the clients' financials to make sure this is really the case, but we obviously would be able to double check this as well.
So let me ask you this, what piece of this are we responsible?
It's certifying the actual costs are eligible for the CPACER lending. So it is, for example, you tell us what you're going to do with the funds, and Eric Schmidt on our team would review to make sure those are actually eligible within the CPACER guidelines.
Okay, I got it.
And then the program administration is we would manage the program guidebook, which is required for all local governments to have. We also would collect a administration fee up to $50,000. It's 1% of the financing amount. So anytime an application comes in, we can collect up to $50,000 or
Depending on the scope of the project.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And we have the option to either directly bill, collect, or enforce this is the enabling legislation, do this ourselves. But in our case, Chattanooga will delegate that responsibility to the capital provider because it is their responsibility and they are entirely at risk for collecting that funds. And I do think it's really important that state legislation explicitly prohibits local government from using any public funds to repay CPACER loans or to use its financial resources on behalf of the program.
So to recap on Councilwoman Burrs' comments, the service used to qualify, kind of like we were using UHY
Yes.
for ARP funds, this is a free service from the city.
Yes.
It doesn't cost you anything to have this checked out or
Well,
the qualifications reviewed.
Yeah, if you want to review it, I'm not entirely certain at what point we would charge the fee, but once we certify it, there would be an administration fee, which would be 1% of the financing, or up to $50,000, depending
Is there
on
a
whatever's eligible.
preliminary meeting, much like we do a zoning case,
Yes.
where you could come in and sit down with the city,
Absolutely.
take a quick look at the overall
For sure.
project, and say, you know what, we think this is a CPACER qualification, or I don't know. I mean, that's obviously.
That's exactly right,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. I know that our Director of Sustainability will be happy to meet with folks who are interested in this funding and tell them if it's a good fit for them.
And for education purposes,
That's
I'm
right.
assuming?
Yep.
So if I owned a commercial property and needed to do upgrades and was looking for the option, and I wanted to invest deeper
Yep.
into more energy efficient roofing or HVAC systems, whatever it is, then a person could use this as a financing option to Councilwoman Hill's point.
That's exactly
This could
right.
be an option for them.
That's exactly right. By passing the ordinance that we will be putting in front of you, that would be an option through our office.
Okay.
And then you all would say, hey, you meet all the criteria,
Yes.
go forward.
Yes, we
Okay.
would, and then we would likely, we would say, hey, this is an appropriate set of costs and scope for the project, and then we would refer the organization or the property owner to an appropriate lender. Most likely, the property owners that would be looking into this would have researched the lenders first, because we are not going to be doing the lending. There would be an
Yeah.
external bank that will be doing the lending. We simply just say, yes, this is an allowable cost within the
And
program.
send it to whoever he's selected.
That's right.
So we gotta stay away from steering in
Right.
any way.
That's right, yes.
Okay.
It seems like an exciting potential tool for developers in town. Like, I think about some of the projects that are full blocks, that have recently come through zoning in District 7, that if that allowed that developer to, for example, put in triple pane or quadruple pane windows, Councilwoman Dotley would hear a lot fewer noise complaints, for example, but it would also increase the energy efficiency of that building, and then the fact that it would pay for, more than pays for itself, it's an interesting tool.
It is.
I'm glad y'all have brought this to us.
Yeah, we think this is an early win that can help us achieve our sustainability goals while at the same time not costing taxpayers a single cent. So it's,
Or creating any burden.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
But creating
Completely
more
choice.
energy
Yep.
efficient buildings, that's neat.
That's the extent of my presentation. I told you I'd keep it brief, but just wanted to go ahead and.
Appreciate that. Any other questions for Mr. Tangnaptua? Yeah.
Just one other point,
Please.
Mr. Chair. It just occurs to me that, a tool like this also, it helps with us, our goals, our vision for our city in the future, because some of these technologies are just new or harder to get, like to your point about creating an ecosystem of,
Yeah.
if there's a new type of insulation, for example, and you've got to bring some people in that then learn how to install that, that adds to our skill set in Chattanooga over time, when maybe we need some vanguard investors in this space. That's neat. Thank you, that's all.
Any other questions?
The administration will be, given that this legislation does require a public hearing, which we have noticed and scheduled for next Tuesday. We have this on your agenda for tonight, but I'm going to be requesting on behalf of the administration a deferral until next week, so that way we are able to hear the public hearing and then proceed with a vote.
Okay, good idea.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're coming up on 3 o'clock. We have a couple of other items to address. We will jump right into the noise ordinance study. I have Councilwoman Hill's name next to this one.
Thank you,
And
Mr. Chair. So everybody, I put together a document. Last week, Councilwoman Burrs made the decision to defer the noise ordinance tweaks for 4 weeks, which was really thoughtful of her and was honestly unexpected for me. But so I took that as an opportunity to start really identifying what are the challenges that I'm hearing in my district. And I know, because we've been talking about this for so long, that it's not just District 2. But it occurred to me that the thing that would be most useful for me to serve my constituents would be to look to our UTC contract to have some additional study done on this. And so I put this document together with the hopes that we could come to an agreement that would be something we would be in support of. Just to have UTC take a look at a handful of items related to best practices of vehicle noise, and help us understand, is there anybody that's doing this well? Is there anybody that has figured out how to lessen the impact of glass pack mufflers, for example? And is it something that we need to address in ordinance language or with regard to tools for our law enforcement? Or is it really more an issue of community building, where we need to work with our neighborhood associations and our motorcycle clubs, whoever it might be, to kind of look at how we handle noise like this? So the key things that I would like to ask UTC to look at is the ordinance language, enforcement tools, and the enforcement process. Just so we've got some data that we can look at, and then make some decisions after that as to whether we need to enhance our ordinance or not. My thought would be that if you all were comfortable with this document, that, I mean, it could be what goes directly to UTC. And that is the extent of that.
All right, thank you for that presentation. Questions, comments? My only comment or question is we do have a 4-week deferral on this item. Have you reached out to Dr. Acuff?
I did not want to do that without
Ahead of
having
council.
brought this to the council.
Sure.
And
would
it
be
could be, you know, it could be that we move forward with the language in the current adjusted ordinance, and then we bring this back around when we have more time. Because I've done quite a bit of research with the police department and things on my end already, and have just hit dead ends everywhere I've gone.
Dr. Burrs?
Yeah, I think I agree with the second suggestion, and let me tell you why. I think that the car noise, the rocket jockeys in the car is something that's may need other looking at. It's more of a, they don't make noise unless they speed. But there's also something that Jenny brought up about the mufflers, the loud kid mufflers. Don't even know if we want to get into that. The thing is, and the only thing different in the ordinance from the original ordinance was that we were extending it to residential areas. And so the only issue that I've ever been concerned about is people are really getting bothered by neighbor noise. You know, that's much more sophisticated. And I'm thinking that probably the best thing to do here is to go ahead and pass what Phil came forward and spend more time doing best practices on this, because Chattanooga is changing, and it's changing all kinds of ways. And the kinds of complaints from people living closer together are different now. And the police agree that the ways they measure noise don't really work now. All right. The other thing is, which came again from the police, which I think it really makes good sense. If somebody calls the police and says, "Hey, my neighbor is making a lot of racket. It's I can't go to sleep. My kids can't," or whatever it is. It gives the police an opportunity not to arrest somebody or anything, but to knock on the door and say, "Hey, your neighbor," and how can it's a relationship building. It's a neighborhood relationship building. So I think there's a win-win if we do the best of both.
Okay.
And go ahead with this ordinance, because it admittedly leaves out the other. We don't need to wait 4 weeks, just go forward with it. And then take some time to look at this other thing. And the only question or concern I would have about that is with budget coming up, and I've already told Jenny this.
Yep.
We've already talked, was I think there's money in the budget to do it and start it now. And I just don't know what the,
You don't know how much we've spent
Yeah.
at UTC?
well, so if you talk to Chris and say, we want to do this limited thing, how long would it take? What would it cost? That's all.
Yeah,
And I think we can figure it out.
yeah, I think with in the coming year, I think it would be useful for us to look at how we as a council use that UTC contract to its fullest benefit to the council, and have a little clearer process of how we decide what gets studied and what doesn't get studied, and
That's cool.
and be able to even have updates on where the budget is, because I don't know what the short-term vacation rental committee, for example, spent with UTC, and how much of our budget allocation is available remaining.
Great segue into, I've spoken with Nicole too to try to answer some of these questions ahead of time. So
Great.
anticipating Dr. Burrs' concern of the budget.
Yeah, and the other thing we'll need, Nicole, is budget as a whole, because each one of us has $6,000 to spend. We haven't spent it. So if I'm gonna make requests to kind of move things around in the budget, which we can do, it's all interdepartmental, then all of those kind of tie together.
Okay, so the question I think at hand is, does council have any objection to having Councilwoman Hill move forward with reaching out to Dr. Acuff and starting the process and assigning the restrictions or guide rails, if you will, on the scope of work that we'd like to see, and ongoing, I keep a work in progress to the noise ordinance. And if you have any objection to that, let me know now. If not, we'll give you, Councilwoman Coonrod?
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Phil, are you able to give us any of this information or pull up any research that Jenny is asking maybe for UTC to research? Because if we can get you to do it, because I know you all pulling stuff, and what I've really seen is in the research that ACUF does with UTC, he really come back and tell us the same thing that we've been wanting to do, or I guess he just reconfirming or affirming what we already say. So is he the only professor that we can contract with to say do study? Have we looked at any other professors that can give us feedback or input, or can it be multiple people, or why is it that we're just utilizing ACUF?
Well, I think to answer your question, Dr. Acuff is our point contact. Now, whether or not he's the actual person doing it, whether it's graduate students or whatnot, I think the contract is with the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga.
So it can be anybody, not specifically just Chris Acuff. Because I'd like to, recommend Dr. Marcus Malden, maybe to look at some of our stuff that we're submitting, if it's decided on whatever studies that we present, to get a different perspective, a different set of eyes. I know that we're probably used to just using Chris Acuff, but I think I would like for us to start using some different professors in some of the research. If we can't get anything concrete back from our attorney office, then okay, yeah, it makes sense. But we've been kind of talking about this noise ordinance and kind of going back and forth this is my second term on council, so we've been kind of talking about it back and forth, changing some things, implementing some new things. And for me, when we all have said that, our Chattanooga is changing, communities are changing, neighborhoods are looking different, but it's a little pettiness in it too, because we're getting to the point where people don't even want you to talk outside your house a little bit, and it's kind of frustrating to even watch and see, because for some neighborhoods, they want the mufflers to come through. They want to see the motorcycles come through and all that kind of stuff. But in our neighborhoods, particularly 5, 7, 8, and 9, we've been living with noise since we've been birthed into Chattanooga. We living next door to railroad tracks coming through our neighborhood. Like, are we gonna mitigate to say we don't want railroads or trains coming through our community? Because a lot of the stuff here and the questions that we're asking, it's not gonna solve the noise that we have in our communities that we're living with every day. So I'm not sure how it's gonna be fair across for every district for the city of Chattanooga, but it looks a lot different when it comes to the black communities that we serve.
So I have a question, just off of what Councilwoman Coonrod was saying. So like for instance, in the proposal or the request that you have, it has Key Streets in District 2, so, and I know we share Market Street and Veteran.
And I'm happy, I was just
So we can
putting
just
down
add-
here,
right.
here's what I've heard from
And
my
your
people,
neighborhood.
and we can expand this.
Right, so we can send
Brief.
like maybe streets that we have, like streets
Sure.
that we, okay.
That'd be great.
Okay.
So about Phil's department doing this research, my understanding of why we have this contract with UTC is to have supplementary research capabilities. And our legal team is really busy with a lot of things. And I know Phil will always say, yes, we can do that. But I wonder, is that the best use of his time when we have a research contract? And if not, do we need to, within our budget, start looking at a person that works on policy research for our city council? Because this is something that we need help with, to come up with ideas beyond, yes, it's legal, no, it's not. But these are things that it's really helpful to be able to have a body of research done by someone other than just the people on this council.
Well, on my end of it, this is the first time I saw the noise ordinance study request today here.
Right,
at
yeah,
this
because I
meeting.
just wrote it and brought it
Yes,
to this
ma'am.
meeting.
Just brought it to this meeting, because I hadn't seen it before today. If you want us to provide information that other cities in Tennessee have adopted here, we have quite a bit of resources that we can rely upon from the municipal attorneys across the state. We also have the ability to contact MTAS to be able to get information from the Municipal Technical Advisory Service here in the state. We try to look on the state level in that regard because those are usually more acceptable and legal here under our Tennessee laws. But we can look at that if you want us
So
to.
what I'd like to have is not just that, but I want to have okay, so they passed that, what happened then? You know, we have a noise ordinance, and within that noise ordinance, it says excessive, operation of vehicles, like hypothetically, or in writing, this problem that exists in our city shouldn't exist because it's in our ordinance that it's not allowed, right? But obviously it hasn't, something's not quite right. So it's more than just a list of things, but an analysis and study of what worked and what didn't work within the language.
Sure. Officers can only cite folks for city ordinance violations in that regard, and they have to catch them to be able to do that. So that's another issue if they're moving.
Yeah,
on.
and that's why, I got those questions.
Dr. Birds and Councilwoman Coonrod.
Well, just real quickly, what I'd like for us to do is to agree to move forward the part that everybody agrees to that we put on hold, because there needs more work done. And then spend whatever time council feels necessary on this issue, plus things that want to be added. All this does is move it to residences, and the ordinance we've always had.
You're referring to the current legislation?
Yeah, I mean, it's this in rocket science. It's take what we have, that we've always had, move it to the residential areas, which is, that's all that's there. Plus, we took away the requirement for the decibel, because the police said they don't work. Other than that, that's it.
Got it. Current ordinance stays as is. Councilwoman Coonrod?
Well, you know, I agree with you, Jeannie. I don't want you to think that I'm not in agreement, but I'm just, in reference to the budget, per se, if we didn't have any funding, what would be the second best thing is that's relying on our city attorney, and we can have direct contact with MTAS as well. I reach out to Hannah all the time, and she provide, research information and more in depth to your questions if we just send it to her. I just didn't want it to be put on the shelf because we don't have it in our budget to do. And I do second what you were saying is that we gotta, we pick and choose a lot what we wanna study, and a lot of times, more than several times, if you're not that most favorable council person, it's not gonna be moved to UTC to study. I think it would be a great idea, but I'm just looking at all ways that we can get the information that we need to move forward.
To that point, we need a more systemized approach for how everybody's requests go through.
So here's my proposal. Is it, would it be amenable to have Councilwoman Hill reach out to UTC just to get a scope of work, to get a price tag, and then we can decide on whether we want to move forward or not? Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay.
And can we move the other up for 4 weeks?
You have that power, ma'am,
Well,
at
how
6
did,
o'clock. You can,
say the one we postponed for
you
4
have that
weeks,
power.
bring it up?
You have that power. If you want to move it back, you have it, on the agenda for 4 weeks in advance, given what I've heard. So, Mr. Attorney, do you, if we wanted to say here, we wanted to move that up?
I think it'd be wise to do that in a public meeting this
That's-
evening on there, just say you'd like to have it heard in 2 weeks.
So do we, so
That's where
when
I
we
was
go
going.
over the agenda session in just a few minutes,
Yes,
I'm gonna say, Mr. Chair,
Mhm.
tonight, I'm gonna ask that piece be moved up.
Yes, ma'am.
So there's notice.
That'll be fine.
Then, tonight, I do that,
Yes, ma'am.
and with the recognition that there's these other
items that are
issues.
out there.
Yeah,
no problem.
okay, that makes sense.
That's where I was.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Picked up a few things from you, Phil.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we will move on with that. Other business, we have something to do, we have several presentations next week, we will talk about that later. Council election of officers is slated for next week, so That time of the year has come upon us. We do not have any pending legislative matters at this time to report. We do have a department report. Councilwoman Coonrod, I have not forgotten about your Chattanooga Police Department report, but I am awaiting the chairman to get back with me in conjunction with Chief Murphy on when they're ready to present. I just want to let you know I did not forget that. I know that's important to you. Board appointments, pending resolutions, HEB appointment, District 7. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. You can look over your current vacancies, adjournment. Okay, anything else that needs to come before strategic planning before we adjourn? We will meet back at 3:30 in the chambers. And this meeting is, Councilwoman Coonrod.
I got one question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know everybody been seeing the news of what's been happening in Nashville with the recent shooting. But I'm concerned now about our YFD sites. We've had, and specifically in my district, there has been, shootings, guns, and so on and so forth that have been reported. You all can look at it yourself, but what do we have in place that's protecting our community centers? Like, are there signs posted to say no guns on property? Are there, are our staff trained in case somebody do come in and have a gun? Now, I'm not saying that, I'm against anybody, no guns. I don't want you to be supportive of your Second Amendment rights. But what I'm saying is, how can we safely protect our YFD sites, the people that are in them, the people that use them? Do we have any ordinances already currently that we need to revisit? Can we as a council work with our chief of police on it? Because it is concerning.
Well, I agree with you. I will say this on the record, I don't, signs aren't gonna stop anybody.
That's true.
So,
That, your point though, about are they trained, in all of our public schools, sadly now, one of the drills on a regular basis is a lockdown drill. And every person in that building knows what to do in the event of somebody, an intruder in the building. And that does seem like something procedurally that would be very valuable.
Councilwoman Hill, I think it's a great point. So the same executive security team with the Chattanooga Police Department that has, you've seen here on Tuesdays, has just recently concluded an active shooter training with all community development staff.
Oh, great.
So we are taking this extremely seriously. They're going to be conducting security assessments in all of our community centers. And again, we're reviewing the governor's proposal that just came out in his budget as well to see if there are additional resources we can add in as well. But we are paying close attention to obviously the environment and also making sure our staff have the training they need. Unfortunately, in this day and age, it's necessary.
So nobody from CPD including our strategic planning just didn't show up. But with the community centers, it's always a spike in crime when there's a break in the school year. And proactively, what we do is we make sure the police department knows to be at the community center at the end of the year or during the spring break or fall break. So I guess it's up to council people to make them aware of that.
Councilwoman, I don't,
Yeah.
never put words in your mouth. Are you asking the question if our YFD centers have a plan in place? And if not, can we put one in place?
We need to put one in place.
Would that be fair?
Just for the
Yeah.
whole entire, all our buildings, because I don't want anybody to be caught off guard, even if we
Yeah.
put, a sign to say, you're here, here's the nearest exit in case you need to run, because some of our community centers, like, you don't even know where the exit is. If you come through the front door,
Yeah.
what other door can you get out of that's safe?
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that our cameras are working, and, it's just so much that I think we can use or do to put in place. Like, I just don't want any of our lives to be lost because we failed to put in precautions or to do anything.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to, see if we could take some time at a strategic planning session.
Yes.
Our police department, the appropriate folks there that can review what we have put in place and what we are putting in place in the near future, just so council has a pretty good understanding of the way we conduct our operations to make sure that those community centers are safe.
Yeah.
That will be up to a new chairperson after today. So after next Tuesday. So I would like to echo though my support for that and Councilwoman Coonrod and looking at that sooner than later,
Right.
much sooner than later. Thank you for bringing that up. I know it's a concern for all of us. Any other comments or questions in strategic planning? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Sit by Jenny, cause I don't want the food to rub off on me.
I know.
I said, I don't want her food to rub off on me.
Oh, I know boots.
Hated that thing, didn't I, Jenny? She heard my mouth.
I hate this thing. Well, I told Marvin about your list.
Yeah. Well, I got on my, to make it as, I got on the same little black shoe that I can. So the last thing she said to me, do not put on a flat shoe. Do not, you need a little heel of some kind. Do not go with the flat. Because it's killing my back.
Yeah, well, and I imagine that's concerned.
Demetrius, you get all that stuff I
You
sent
know, my
you?
back years ago.
Demetrius, you get all that stuff I sent you? I figured you might, but I was sitting on what I had. I saw that last one, I'm not sure we can remember the rest of it.
That's right. It could come. It could
Yeah,
come.
money, I'm not sure.
That would be good.
We don't have.
No, I didn't. Out there, yes. It was so crazy.
Yeah, I'm good, just let me know.
Our hands on the YMCA is our community.
Darren,
No, because
can you offer?
I go about the same way as they do.
No,
But
no.
we could probably say,